My name is Hazel, but most people here just call me Granny Hazel. And I have lived a long life. A life of love, of sacrifice, of dreams so big they once kept me awake at night. I have seen the seasons turn, the warmth of spring when I fell in love, the storm of winter when I lost my husband, the golden autumn when my daughter was born, and the cold nights when loneliness wrapped itself around me. But never, not in all my years, did I imagine the day would come when my own daughter would hide me in the basement of the house I paid for with my sweat and tears. Yes, you heard me right. She told me one evening when guests were at the door, "Stay downstairs. Don't come out. I don't want them to see you." Her words stung sharper than knives. I sat in the basement, surrounded by dust and shadows, listening to the sound of laughter above me, the laughter of my daughter and her friends in my own house, while I sat hidden away like a shameful secret. And that, my dear children, is the story I will tell you today. A story of sacrifice, betrayal, and a lesson carved deep into an old woman's heart. I was only 23 when I lost my husband. His name was Joseph. Oh, how his memory still lingers like a fading song. He was tall, kind, with hands that smelled of fresh soil from the garden he loved. We were poor, yes, but happy. He used to say to me, "Mary, money can buy food, but love is what keeps the soul alive." When our daughter, Clara, was born, he held her in his arms and whispered, "She will be our pride, Mary. She will carry us in her laughter." But fate is cruel sometimes. Joseph fell ill when Clara was only 4. The doctors called it pneumonia, but to me, it was a thief that came in the night and stole the laughter from our home. I remember holding Clara close at his funeral, her small hand clutching mine. She looked up at me and asked, "Mama, where is Papa going?" I swallowed my grief and forced a smile. "He's going to be with the angels, my love. But don't worry, Mama will always be here." From that day on, my life was no longer mine. It belonged to Clara. I worked morning till night, cleaning houses, sewing clothes, baking bread to sell in the market. My hands cracked from the soap, my back bent from scrubbing floors, but I never complained. Every coin I earned, I saved for Clara's future. When she grew older, she dreamed of becoming a teacher. I sold my wedding ring, Joseph's old watch, and even the little gold bangles my mother had given me, just so Clara could go to college. "Don't worry about me, Mama. One day I'll take care of you." She used to say that. Those words kept me alive. Every time I fell sick, I pushed myself up again. Every time I wanted a new dress, I patched the old one. Every time hunger gnawed at me, I told myself, better she eats than me. And slowly, my Clara grew. She became everything I had hoped for, smart, beautiful, and determined. She walked across that graduation stage in her black gown, and I clapped until my hands burned. My heart swelled with pride, thinking, all those years, all those nights, they were worth it. When she found her first job, I was the happiest mother alive. And when she said, "Mama, let's buy a house, a real house, not just this small rented place," my heart swelled with joy. Yes, my love, a house of our own. I opened my small wooden box, the one where I had saved coins, notes, and little treasures for years. Inside was everything I had left: Joseph's watch, the money I'd saved from extra jobs, and even the gold bangles my mother had given me. I pushed it toward her and said, "Take it, Clara. Use this for the house." She shook her head at first, tears filling her eyes, and said, "Mama, you've given me everything already. I can't." But I pressed it in her hands. A mother's joy is not in keeping, but in giving. If this house makes your future brighter, then let it be my gift. That was the day we signed the papers. The house was put in Clara's name because I wanted her to feel secure, rooted. I remember standing in the doorway that evening, looking at the freshly painted walls and the small garden outside. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold, and Clara hugged me, whispering, "Mama, I'll never forget this. I'll take care of you, always." I believed her. Oh, how deeply I believed her. Little did I know, the very walls of that house, the house I built with my sweat and sacrifice, would one day become the walls that shut me away. At first, life in the new house felt like a dream come true. The rooms smelled of fresh paint, the floors shone with polish, and in the evenings, Clara and I would sit by the little garden, sipping tea as the crickets began their nightly song. I thought to myself, finally, after all the storms, here is peace. For the first few months, Clara treated me as she always had. She would call out from the kitchen, "Mama, do you want sugar in your tea?" Or bring me a blanket when the evenings grew cold. I would sit in the living room, knitting by the fire, and watch her hum to herself as she graded papers or read books. She was building her career, her life, and I felt proud. I told myself, this is what Joseph wanted. This is the life he dreamed for us. But then, little by little, things began to change. It started with small remarks. One evening, Clara came home from work, her hair perfectly styled, her clothes smelling faintly of expensive perfume. She placed her bag on the table and said, "Mama, when my colleagues come over, could you stay in your room just for a while?" Her words caught me by surprise. "Stay in my room? Why, Clara?" She hesitated, then smiled awkwardly. "It's just, they're younger, and I don't want them to feel uncomfortable. You know how people are." I forced a smile and nodded. "Of course, my love, I understand." But inside, something stung. Why would anyone be uncomfortable with me, her mother? Still, I told myself it was nothing, just a small request. She was young, she had her own life, her own friends. Maybe I was being too sensitive. But soon, it happened again. When she had friends over, I noticed she would lower her voice when she mentioned me. Sometimes she didn't mention me at all. If I walked into the room, she would quickly change the subject, her smile tight, her eyes shifting nervously. One day, I heard her laugh with a friend and say, "Oh, it's just me living here." Just me. As if I didn't exist. That night, when she came to my room, I asked gently, "Clara, why did you say that? Why tell them you live alone?" She looked embarrassed. Mama, please don't take it the wrong way. People my age don't really understand. They think it's unusual to still live with your mother. I just don't want them to judge me. Her words pierced me like a knife. Unusual? Judge her? Had I become a burden? I swallowed my pain and nodded. I see. From that day on, things only grew worse. Clara began spending more and more time outside the house. Late nights, dinners, parties. When she returned, I would be waiting with warm food, but she often waved it away, saying, "I already ate." The meals grew cold on the table, and so did the space between us. Sometimes I overheard her on the phone. "Yes, of course I'll be there." No, don't worry, my mother won't be around." My heart sank each time, but I said nothing. And then the whispers began. I noticed how when guests came unexpectedly, she would rush to me. "Mama, could you please go to your room just for a little while?" I obeyed every time, sitting quietly on my bed, staring at the walls, listening to the laughter and chatter outside my door. I felt like a stranger in my own home. One evening, when I stepped into the living room to get water, Clara's eyes widened in panic. She quickly stood, blocking me from view, and whispered sharply, "Mama, please just go back. Not now." Her tone, so sharp, so unlike the daughter I had raised, broke something inside me. I went back to my room, tears blurring my vision. I sat in the dark and whispered to myself, "Why, Clara? Why are you ashamed of me?" The very house I had dreamed of, the house I had paid for, was beginning to feel like a prison. And yet, I still hoped. I still told myself she would come around, that this was just a phase, that my daughter would never truly abandon me. But I was wrong. So terribly wrong. Because the day would soon come when she wouldn't just ask me to stay in my room, she would push me somewhere far worse, somewhere no mother should ever be forced to go. The basement. The night it happened was colder than most. Rain tapped against the windows, and the house felt unusually silent. I sat in my room, knitting by the dim light of my lamp, waiting for Clara to return home. When I heard the front door creak open, I smiled and called out, "Clara, is that you, darling?" But instead of her cheerful reply, I heard hushed voices. Clara was speaking quickly, her words sharp like whispers carried by the wind. I strained my ears. "Yes, don't worry, she won't be in the way much longer," Clara said. My heart skipped a beat. She? Was she talking about me? Moments later, Clara appeared at my door. She wasn't smiling. Her eyes were cold, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Mama," she began, her tone unusually firm, "we need to talk." I set down my knitting and forced a smile. "Of course, my love. What is it?" She stepped inside, arms folded. "You can't keep staying in the main rooms. My colleagues think it's strange. You don't understand how hard this is for me." I frowned softly. "But Clara, this is our home. I paid it for She cut me off, her voice rising. "No, you live here now. You're just here." Her words struck me like lightning. I could barely breathe. "Just here?" I whispered. She sighed and turned her face away, as if ashamed. "Look, Mama, I thought about it. You can move your things into the basement. It's spacious enough, and you'll have your privacy. That way, when people come, it won't be awkward."
The basement. My chest tightened. The thought of that cold, dark place with its cement floors and cobwebbed corners made my skin crawl. Clara, my voice trembled, that basement is for storage, not for living. There's no sunlight, no warmth. How could I? But she cut me off again. Mama, please don't make this harder. I'm trying to balance my life here. You'll be fine. I stared at her, searching for the little girl I once knew, the child who used to hold my hand and promise never to leave me. But all I saw was a woman hardened by pride, by fear of judgment. Tears welled in my eyes. After everything, after I gave you this home, you would push me into the basement? For the briefest moment, I thought I saw doubt flicker in her gaze, but it vanished as quickly as it came. She set her jaw. It's what's best, for both of us. And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving me trembling in silence. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, staring at the rain, remembering Joseph's words. Take care of Clara. She'll be your light. But now, my light had turned into shadow. The next morning, I found cardboard boxes stacked by my door. Clara's voice called out from the hallway, brisk and impatient. Mama, start packing your things. I'll help you move them downstairs. I touched the boxes with shaking hands, the same hands that had once carried Clara as a baby, washed her clothes, cooked her meals, held her close during thunderstorms. And now, those hands were packing away my life. When we carried the last of my belongings down the narrow wooden stairs, the air grew damp and heavy. The basement smelled of dust and mildew. A single bulb dangled from the ceiling, its light weak and flickering. There, she said, setting down the final box. You'll be comfortable. I'll bring down a blanket. Comfortable? I looked around at the concrete walls, the bare floor, the shadows creeping in the corners. This was not comfort. This was exile. I turned to her, my voice breaking. Clara, please don't do this to me. Her expression hardened. Mama, stop making me feel guilty. I'm doing what I have to. You'll understand someday. And then she left. The door at the top of the stairs closed, and the lock clicked. I was alone. The silence pressed against me, heavier than the walls. I sat on the old wooden chair Clara had brought down, clutching my shawl, my heart aching with a pain deeper than words. For the first time in my life, I wondered, did my own child truly not want me anymore? I whispered into the empty basement, Joseph, if only you were here, if only you could see what's become of us. And as the bulb above me flickered and dimmed, I realized something. This house was no longer mine. This daughter was no longer mine. And this basement might become my prison. The basement became my world. Days blurred into nights, nights into days. I would sit on the old chair or curl up on the thin mattress Clara had dragged down, listening to the muffled sounds of life above me, the clinking of glasses, bursts of laughter, footsteps pacing across the polished floors. Sometimes she would bring me food, but always in haste. A plate slid into the table, a brief glance, then the door closing again. No warmth, no smile, no love. At first, I tried to tell myself it was temporary, that maybe she was stressed, that work and life had pulled her away, and soon she'd realize what she was doing. But as weeks passed, I saw the truth.
She wasn't planning to bring me back upstairs. She wasn't ashamed of the basement. She was ashamed of me. One night, I overheard her on the phone. The house was quiet, and her voice carried down through the thin floorboards. "Yes," she said, laughing softly. "It's fine now. She stays downstairs most of the time. Honestly, it's easier this way. Out of sight, out of mind." Those words cut me deeper than any knife could. Out of sight, out of mind. I covered my mouth to stifle a sob, afraid she might hear me. Tears streamed down my face, soaking the blanket I clutched. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat staring at the weak bulb above me, whispering into the shadows. "Joseph, I tried. I raised her the best I could. I gave her everything. I even gave her this house. Why? Why has she turned her heart to stone?" But the silence gave no answer. Weeks turned into months. My hands grew frailer, my steps slower. Sometimes I would climb the stairs, pressing my ear against the locked door, listening for Clara's voice, hoping, always hoping. But every time, I heard nothing meant for me. And then one morning, something shifted inside me. I woke to the sound of birds chirping faintly through the small basement window. The sunlight trickled in, a rare, golden beam across the floor. I sat up slowly, my body weak but my mind unusually clear. For the first time, I asked myself, why am I waiting? Why am I clinging to someone who no longer wants me? I loved Clara with every fiber of my being, but love without respect is a chain, and I had been chained long enough. That afternoon, when Clara came down to leave me another plate of food, I spoke. "Clara, I will not stay down here anymore." She blinked, startled. "Mama, what are you talking about? Don't start this again." "No," I interrupted for the first time in years. My voice didn't tremble. "I gave you life. I gave you love. I gave you this home, but you have given me only walls and shadows. If you see me as a burden, then so be it. But I will not die in this basement." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. For the first time, she looked small, smaller than the daughter I remembered, smaller than the woman she pretended to be. I stood, clutching my shawl. My legs shook, but I walked past her, up the stairs, into the light of the house I had built. She didn't stop me. She didn't say a word. Perhaps guilt held her tongue. Perhaps shame. I didn't look back. That evening, I packed a small bag with my clothes, a photo of Joseph, and the few things that mattered most. Before I walked out the front door, I turned one last time. The house was beautiful, yes. Every brick, every tile, every window was a reminder of the sacrifices I had made. But beauty means nothing when the heart inside it turns cold. I whispered softly, "Goodbye, Clara. May life teach you what I no longer can." And then I stepped out into the world. The road ahead was uncertain. I had no map, no clear place to go. But for the first time in a long while, I felt free. Because even in my loneliness, I carried with me something stronger than betrayal. My dignity. And that was something no basement, no house, no ungrateful child could ever take away.